Lows and Highs of Adrien Agreste, the Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written by Black Cat's Butterflies. Voice and record, Harpsigirl. Summary. Adrien Agreste, teenage supermodel, son of Gabriel Agreste, hero of Paris, type 1 diabetic. When Adrien is diagnosed with a chronic illness, he goes through the mental struggles of dealing with this new life. Nothing will ever be the same again, and if anyone were to find out, he'd be humiliated. The world would find him repulsing. Who would want to love someone who was constantly giving themselves shots? Marinette would. Chapter 1. Diabetes? Gabriel said wide-eyed. No, that can't be right. Adrien is on a very strict diet at the moment. That has nothing to do with his diagnosis. Unfortunately, there was no possible way that you could have avoided it. As I said, he has type 1, which is autoimmune and mostly develops at a young age. The doctor explained, adjusting the saline insulin drip he just installed into Adrien's IV tube. Genetic? Impossible. No one on either side of his family has ever had this disability. He said the word as if it was poison on his tongue, like he was disgusted over the fact that his son could be any less than perfect. You must be mistaken. Check again. I can assure you, the doctor repeated, that Adrien does have type 1 diabetes. Not only did his tests confirm it, but his blood sugar is high enough that our monitors can't even read it, and they go up to 700s. What's a normal number? It should be regulated between 80 to 120. Gabriel ran his fingers through his hair then, taking off his glasses, pinched his nose in a frustration. Adrien, he said sternly, how much sugar have you consumed over the past week? Adrien shook his head. He honestly hadn't been paying attention to the conversation at all. His head was throbbing, his mind was foggy, he was weak, and his chest was most certainly bruised from the number of times he'd thrown up in the past 24 hours. But most of all, he was thirsty. Really, really thirsty. His teeth stuck to his dry lips as he responded in a groggy voice. What? Have you been going behind my back? I don't know what. Don't bombard him with questions, the doctor interjected, and Adrien began to dissociate again, staring at an imperfection under the paint in the wall until the room stopped spinning. This will be a huge adjustment. He will need time to process everything. And I can say that Adrien's pancreas has not been producing insulin for a while now. He jotted something down on his clipboard. Any carbs he's eaten since then had been building up for a while. He's in what we call diabetic ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis? Gabriel raised his eyebrows. Isn't that kidney failure? Yes, his urine tests came back with ketones, but don't worry, it's reversible. He gestured his head to outside Adrien's room in the air. Let's go outside and discuss treatment options. No need to stress him out. Gabrielle nodded, stepping out the door just as a nurse came in. She closed the curtain behind her. Adrien Agreste? She asked, snapping him back into reality. He nodded and she smiled at him. I'm Lydia. I'll be checking in on you until they can find you a bed in the ICU. Hi, he managed. Can I get you anything? She asked, smiling. Water. Please, I really need water. Lydia sighed. I'm not allowed to give you any food or water, but do you need anything else? Please, he pleaded. Okay, I'll tell you what. How about some ice chips? You can rub them over your lips. She smiled and walked out, coming back 2 minutes later. She handed him a paper Dixie cup. Thank you. He took out an ice cube and glided it over his lips. Don't tell anyone, She winked, placing another cup on the table next to him. You might have go to the bathroom again soon, since you have an IV drip. Adrien glanced down to the cannula in the inside of his elbow. It was weirdly itchy. He was tempted to scratch it. Let me know when and I'll come and detach it. You're going to need to take urine samples every few hours so we can make sure your ketone levels drop. He didn't really understand what was going on or what the hell ketones were, but he nodded anyway. Lydia sat on the edge of his bed. I know you're really drowsy right now and you're really confused, but trust me, you're gonna kick butt at this. I can tell you're a smart kid. It's going to be hard, but you'll push through. She was right. He was scared. He didn't understand anything that was happening right now. He was too tired to process anything. This morning he couldn't even get out of bed, couldn't even walk, couldn't even eat. But he'd trust her. Leave the worrying for when he learned what was wrong with him. Thank you, he said. Dr. Kratz came back, opening the curtain. All right, Adrien, he said. We're going to move you into the ICU in an hour or two. You'll rest up, and when your blood sugar becomes low enough for you to think straight, we'll explain what is happening to your body. Okay? Okay. We're gonna take good care of you. Okay. Dr. Kratz smiled, turning to Lydia. Regular finger pricks at the hour. You can order some anti-nausea if he requests it. Then he picked up his clipboard and left. Why don't you try by yourself this time? Lydia passed him the notepad they had been practicing equations on. Adrien never thought algebra would be such a huge part of diabetes. Or vocab terms. So many vocab terms. Like correction factor, how he brought his blood sugar down, carb ratio, how much insulin he gave himself when he ate, and bolus. He still wasn't sure what that meant, but he thought he got the gist of it. Carbs bring blood sugar up. Insulin brings it down. By giving yourself insulin when you eat, you prevent your blood sugar from going too high, if you calculate how much you need correctly. So all he had to do was figure out how much. First things first, his blood sugar was 277, and he was eating 67 carbs. So, start with the blood sugar, Lydia said. If we're trying to get to 120 from 227, we use subtraction? Yes, perfect! And Adrien jotted it down. In the end, and after 2 failed attempts, he ended up with a messy sheet of paper that actually started to make some sense. Blood sugar, BG, 227. Correction factor, CF, 21. Target blood sugar, TBG, 120. Carb count, TC, 64. Carb ratio, CR, 18. 227 minus 120 equals 107. 107 divided by 21 equals 5.0952 or 5.1. 64 divided by 18 equals 3.5555 or 3.6. 3.6 plus 5.1 equals 8.7. 8.7 units of insulin. Perfect! That's correct! Lydia applauded him. Really? Adrien beamed. He did it. He actually did it. Yes, you're going to do great when you're discharged tomorrow. She grabbed the syringe from the table behind her. You want to do your own shot again? No, not really. Adrien nervously giggled. He absolutely hated needles, with a burning passion. and he was going to have to administer them himself starting tomorrow, for the rest of his life. Oh God, for the rest of his life! He'd gotten used to the IV, as they put it in when he could barely even think straight, and the shots of insulin Lydia had been giving him every 3 hours weren't too bad. But Lydia is a professional. This is her job. She knows what she's doing. She went to school for this. Adrien is a 15-year-old boy who's given himself like 2 injections. With help. What happens when he forgets how to do the math equations? Or when he can't remember how to prime a needle? This was all too much. Way too much. If he screwed up, then he could die. His eyes watered as he looked away in shame. He hadn't cried yet. He'd been in the hospital for 5 days and he hadn't cried yet. Whether it was due to him not processing everything that was thrown at him yet, or the disapproval he would get from his father for letting his emotions show, he didn't know. But it was finally hitting him. All the things he loved doing, like fencing, he was pretty sure he couldn't do them anymore. Exercising usually led to low blood sugar, which wasn't good at all. Lydia said if it gets too low, he could pass out or seize. Could he even be Chanois anymore? Fuck. Adrien, I know what you're thinking, Lydia sighed. It's going to be okay. I promise you. She rubbed his back. You're going to nail this. How do you know that? He all but screamed, a tingling numbness making its way to his face. Don't let the tears fall, he told himself. I can't do this. I can barely make myself toast. I've never done laundry before. I've never cleaned my room myself. I've never even gone shopping for my own clothes. He grabbed at his hair, tugging roughly, just enough to rip out several strands of golden hair. How could I possibly manage something like this? Lydia grabbed his wrists, pulling them from his scalp. By not panicking, she said. By looking at this disease and saying, I'm not going down without a fight. Adrien let a tear fall shamefully, whipping his hands away to wipe it quickly, lest his father walk in. You're capable of more than you know, she said, and you'll get the hang of it, promise. He didn't know if he believed her, but he nodded nonetheless. She handed him the filled syringe. He took it with shaking hands. Remember, the stomach is always the easiest place since it typically holds more fat, but you can also do your arm or thigh. My mom always squeezed my hand when I took shots, he whispered. Since she disappeared, his father refused to do the same. Well, Lydia said, you need both hands, but I'll gladly squeeze your shoulder. She placed her hand there. Now pinch the skin, put the needle in, push the barrel down, and let go of the skin before you pull it out. Adrien shook slightly as he pulled the edge of his shirt up, having graduated from the hospital gown as he'd be leaving soon, and Lydia's grip tightened as he followed her instructions. Breath in, breath out. Oh, the needle penetrated his skin. Moving as fast as he could, he pushed the insulin in and removed it. You're done, Lydia smiled. I'm done? You're done, she repeated. You did it. 2 weeks later. Marinette had been under the impression that since he came back to school, something was up with Adrien. Was he still sick? There was no mistaking that he wasn't feeling well before he left for 2 weeks. He was all skin and bones, constantly drinking water, going to the bathroom every period, not to mention the amount of time he spent sleeping in class. After conversing with Nino, the two originally thought Gabriel had put him on a water-only diet for a model shot, and that seemed likely at the time. But now he was eating snacks in class twice a day, and Mrs. Bastier was completely fine with it. Maybe she knew something was up, because usually it's against school policy. Marinette watched curiously as Adrien took out a protein bar, taking a look at the nutrition facts and jotting something down on his notepad. He raised his hand. "Yes, Adrien?" The teacher called on him, and he pointed to the door. "Yes, you may go." Standing, he grabbed the paper and a small bag around the size of a fanny pack and headed towards the hallway. "Thank you, Miss Bastier." Something small had fallen out of the bag and landed on the floor by his desk when he stood. No one else seemed to notice it couldn't have been larger than a thimble, but Marinette couldn't help but be morbidly curious. When Adrien returned a few minutes later, he put the bag away and started eating the bar. This cycle had repeated every day since he got back. He did it in the morning, during lunch, and in the afternoon. "Hey, Alice," she whispered to her friend. Alia replied. "Don't you think it's kind of weird that Adrien is always leaving class with that bag?" "I mean, a little," she shrugged. "I don't know. I mean, it's his business. We should just leave it alone." But Marinette couldn't leave it alone. She could tell. Whatever that thing in his back was, it was something big. So that's why she hung back until most everyone had left the classroom and went to pick up the object. Whatever it was, it had a light grey cap, and the bottom was sealed by a blue peel of sticker. She read it. "Ultra fine pen needles, short 8mm by 31G. Wait, what? Was Adrien doing? She twisted off the cap, eyes widening as she found exactly what the sticker had said, a needle. A needle! Adrien was doing drugs.